Hey Nanny Posse fam, this is Jasmine Berry, the founder here at Nanny Posse and your friendly nanny mentor. I'm here to share valuable insights and stories with you through this new series we are calling Posse Talk. Welcome to the podcast that brings you insightful tips and tricks for navigating the world of professional nannying, childcare, and early childhood education. Join us as we delve into the joys, challenges, and everything in between in the world of childcare. So again, today you are joining us for our newly reimagined series, Posse Talks. For those of you that have been following us for a while, you might remember our first attempt at vlogging. We called those Posse Talks. Around that same time that we launched Posse Talks, I took on another exciting venture that had nothing to do with Nanny Posse and put a lot of focus on that, and vlogging went to the wayside. However, as we have been growing not only in that separate venture, but also here at Nanny Posse, we've been looking for ways to share our experiences, insights, and knowledge that we continue to gain and grow in, and bring that back to our community, because community is so near and dear to us. It's the foundation of what we created Nanny Posse around. So we had to think of something that fit into our new lifestyle, my new lifestyle, and we decided that instead of vlogging, instead of doing something that required me to get a set ready and be in front of a camera, be a little bit more camera focused or visual focused, we wanted to do a podcast because it's always more about the information and not necessarily coming to you via video. However, we still want to figure that out, but we wanted to make sure that we could get information to you. So podcasts will be our focus, and then we'll start going into vlogs and short videos like that. As you might have seen, we're starting to get a little bit more active on Instagram, on Facebook again. So you're going to start to see a lot more of those lives and reels come your way. So if you need to see our pretty faces, you can check us out there. But if you want to hear the information, if you want to hear what we have to offer, that's where podcasts are going to come in. And I am so excited because when it comes down to it, I started Nanny Posse to share with you all, to be able to give information, but also to learn alongside of you. And that is what I'm hoping can happen as we take Posse Talks into a podcast format. Now, as we do podcasting as well, you also have to think now you can take us with you wherever you're going, which I'm also so excited about. I love a good podcast when I'm trying to do laundry, or if I'm driving, or anything where it can kind of be in the background, especially my business podcast. If I'm working or doing kind of a low mental load task, such as maybe just cutting out some materials for the classroom, I can listen to these podcasts. And I'm hoping that our podcast can provide you that same enjoyment as well as fulfillment. So whether you are a parent, childcare professional, nanny, or early childhood educator, you're in the right place, because here we are going to be sharing information with you. So let's get into the why of Posse Talk, introduce you to the amazing team behind this podcast, because I can't do it myself. You wouldn't have a podcast if there wasn't a team to help me. And then sharing some of the core values that drive our content. So let's get into that today. Now, let's talk a little bit about the why, but let's start with a story. So when I first started Nanny Posse, I was looking for ways to connect with my community. I wanted Nanny Posse to be not just a agency, not just a community piece, but a source that allowed for education and sharing of knowledge. But we were in the middle of a pandemic. I was also new to social media for business. And I felt very uncomfortable creating reels and vlogs in particular. Anything that required me to get in front of a camera just seemed to be way more work for me than typing something out or getting work done on the computer or the behind the scenes. So the idea of having to put my face on social media, the idea of filming myself to forever be out there was just nerve-wracking. But then you're probably saying, well, then why didn't you start podcasts sooner? Well, I thought I needed a lot of fancy equipment to start podcasts. I thought that I needed a studio. And I've decided to take away those limiting factors, the things that were keeping me from just starting. And I'm starting now. And I will tell you, while I have a mic, it's not the best mic. So the sound's a little iffy in the beginning. That's why. I'll work on it. Love your opinions. If other pieces of the quality and the editing aren't the best, I will be learning, my team will be learning. This is not what we do. So it will improve, but we just wanted to start because you cannot finish anything you do not start. And I wanted to at least finish this attempt at the very least, this chapter at the very least. So that is where we are today. Today we are starting. It's not perfect, and I'm going to admit that. It's not going to be 100%, and I'm okay with that because we're here, we're showing up, and I cannot wait to grow with you. I believe that taking risks and pushing yourself out of your comfort zone is an essential piece for growth, but also success, both in business and in life. So as I push myself out of my comfort zone, I hope you too will push yourself out of your comfort zone as you listen to Posse Talks, as you take what we say and put it into action, as you use our community as a source of encouragement to propel you forward in whatever venture you want to do. It doesn't necessarily have to be you taking a lesson that we teach, but just seeing how everyone in this community will continue to push themselves and grow, and then just joining alongside us. That is what we want from you here. And if that is what you want, then quite frankly, you're in the right place. So you don't have to currently be a nanny. You don't have to currently be a nanny employer. You don't have to have a nanny agency. You could just simply enjoy the content that we're putting out and be a part of a supportive community. If you want to be a part of a supportive community, if you want to hear what we have to say, then you're in the right place. And I'm not kicking you out. I'm not going to say that you can't be a part of this. We're here for everyone. So I can't wait to see what you all add to this whole experience. But again, this is the start of a pandemic response, is how we came up with Posse Talks. However, this might be the start, but what you are experiencing right now is the result of me personally saying, I'm done waiting for this to be perfect. I'm done waiting for everything to set up just right. So you're going to get the raw, realistic kind of version of who I am. And I ask that if you do decide to join me on this journey or my team, that you come in with I'll come in with grace, but if you come in with some acceptance in the fact that we are not going to be 100% from the beginning, but we are trying to grow. So if you see a little bit of improvement from us each week, then we're doing what I set out to do, and that is just to become better than who we were yesterday. All right, so with that being said, that is kind of the why and the story behind Posse Talk. So let's get into some of the core values of what is going to make this podcast. What is going to be the nitty gritty of what we're going to bring you in future episodes. Posse Talk will explore topics such as child development, parenting strategies, and entrepreneurship in the childcare industry. These are all topics that are near and dear to my heart. They are the backbone of my companies, and they are to the core, the essence of who I am as not just a businesswoman, but as a person. I love being able to study and grow in these things on a daily basis on these topics. We want to be able to make sure that as we are introducing these topics, that we're providing valuable insights and resources for parents and caregivers alike, or just for the childcare curious or the nanny curious, those that want to understand more about who our world is or who's within our world and what our world has to offer. So the mission of Posse Talk is that we are going to be committed to creating a supportive and educational platform for everyone involved in this space. So here's how we're going to approach that mission. Number one is community building. Again, Nanny Posse was created around the core focus of community, hence the name Posse. I didn't just like the way it sounded. It had meaning and it had a purpose when I chose the name Posse. So we're looking through Posse Talks to create community. Our primary goal is to build a strong, supportive community where everyone, once again, everyone feels welcome. If you don't feel welcome within our community, we're not doing our job, and we'd love to hear from you as to why you don't feel welcome. And if you don't feel as if you can welcome everyone inside this community, I hate to say it, but then this just might not be the community for you. So on top of that, we are committed to addressing the diverse needs and concerns of parents, caregivers, and children alike, because again, this space is for everyone. So it's not just about the adults' needs and how the adults can grow, but how can we support our children and their growth? So to do that, we're going to collaborate and consider the different perspectives of all of these individuals within our group: parents, caregivers, educators, industry professionals, and from time to time, the voices of the children themselves, because we're going to aim to establish a supportive network that enriches all involved. Now, that last piece was very scripted, but it just sounded so great. It embodies what I'm trying to tell you all. And that, once again, I can't emphasize this enough. This community is meant for everyone. Number two is education. We aim to provide valuable evidence-based information supported by firsthand experiences. Let me say that again. We aim to provide valuable evidence-based information supported by our firsthand experiences. And that's really, really important to me, because evidence-based information is important. But hearing from those, being one of those that takes that information, that takes those studies and those practices and puts them into practice firsthand, hearing from that person, being that person, is so important to helping us to not only understand, but to truly learn what we need to do moving forward. So we're hoping that this can excel you in whatever role you sit in this childcare world. Empowerment is number three, and this is the last one. So I don't just want to create community. I don't just want to educate. I am here to empower those. Again, I was talking about not starting this podcast for so long because I was afraid of what needed to happen. I didn't feel empowered. I didn't feel that I had what it took to create a podcast. I didn't feel that I had the knowledge or the experience. And I don't want you to feel that way, because creating this podcast isn't the first time I felt like that in my career. I felt like that when I started my nanny journey. I felt like that when I started my preschool. But in the end, there were people behind me that reminded me that I have what it takes, and they would tell me why I have what it takes. They would remind me what skills I had, what knowledge I brought, what personal essence of myself made what I had to offer special and spectacular. And they empowered me. They didn't just support me, they empowered me to move forward and get things done. So, along with educating, along with creating a community, we want to see you truly excel in what you have to do. Now, with that being said, now you're wondering, all right, so whose community am I joining? Who's educating me? Who's empowering me? That would first and foremost be myself. I will be creating and narrating these podcasts alongside others. So let me introduce myself first. I have nearly 2 decades of industry experience, having worked across 3 continents and 4 countries as a childcare provider. I'm passionate about using my degree in early childhood education to support families. And not only am I the founder of Nanny Posse, this community where parents and nannies connect and support each other, but also Schoolhouse Prep, a preschool that focuses on holistic education on a farm setting. These 2 companies are my babies, and they have a lot in common, actually, as both are meant to empower families to be strong within their nuclear familial setting. They're also meant to support children to become their best, most independent and strong, fiery selves. I want children to feel as if they can be their true selves at all times, and that they feel empowered to share with the world who they truly are. So both of my companies help to accomplish those goals, and I hope to eventually help to show you how I've used my work, not just as a nanny, but as a teacher and as an administrator, to actually walk the talk. Now, again, I'm not doing this alone. I wouldn't be here if I was doing this alone because yes, while people have empowered me, people are supporting me, and some of those supporters are my incredible team who also have some amazing experienced childcare professionals. Most important person, the one who's going to be the behind the scenes with me every step of the way, is Natalie Romo, and she is the CEO of Nanny Posse, and she is also a very important part. She's my partner in Schoolhouse Prep, and she's going to be helping me with the podcast and some other pieces that I'll mention at a later date that have evolved because of the podcast. So Natalie, she will be a lot behind the scenes, but hopefully, especially this summer, you'll also hear her over the mic and maybe even in some of our videos. Along with that, we'll have other special guests like my co-teacher, Catherine Thornton, or my very dear friend, Tara Segrave, who all 3 of us have been nannies. Or all 4 of us, I should say. All 4 of us have been nannies. We've all worked in the nanny industry, and we all have a different level of childcare development, education, and practice under our belts. And we very different perspectives. But my network doesn't stop there, and we'll continue to bring you other guest speakers, other industry professionals, as you tell us you would like to learn certain topics. We'll choose along those lines. So stay tuned to see what episodes we create, who we bring into the podcast, or just what crazy story I'm going to tell next. Because if I do a lot of these alone, you're going to start to hear stories. I love to talk. I love to share experiences. So yeah, you just have to stay tuned. Now, normally we wouldn't be coming to this part of the segment right away in a typical podcast episode. However, this is just our introduction episode. What you would normally find maybe another 10 or 20 minutes into the episode is, at this point, we would be doing our Q&A session. Now, Q&As are going to be, or the questions, I should say, the question part of the Q&A will be submitted by our Patreon community. Dun, 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 dun. That's the other part of our podcasting journey that we're taking on. We've created a Patreon community for people to not only support our efforts in this podcasting journey, but also to create that community that we talked about. That's one of the ways that you're going to see this community kind of evolve and take shape. So certain levels of supporters, I believe it is starting at the pro supporter, you can start to submit queries for our Q&A section. Some of those questions will, if they align with a podcast episode, will be answered in this section of a podcast. This is where you will hear those on the section. Now, I don't want to say random, but unrelated questions, because all questions have merit, just maybe not all will pertain to a certain podcast episode. Those will be answered. That is for sure. Under the pro level, we will have monthly Q&A videos where we answer some of those broader questions, where you can get your answers there. And again, you will have to be part of Patreon in order to see those answers and be a part of that Q&A session. So pretending as if you already knew that Patreon existed, pretending as if we already had some questions, let's answer some of the questions that we already get out and about through our network and our community. And one of the number one questions that I get when someone meets me is, how did you get started in the childcare industry? And I can only help but laugh, because it could be its own episode. And if after this answer you want the full nitty-gritty, it can be its own episode. But right now I'm going to condense it. And the short and sweet is that I became a childcare provider by accident. I started my childcare journey, I believe at about 11 or 12, actually, when I took a CPR class for babysitting, or it might have been a babysitting course that had CPR involved. At this point, I can't even remember. It was at our local public library in Florida, and it was put on by the doctors' wives. It was a little bit of a self-serving course for them, because then they had a whole list of preteen and teenage sitters who were relatively cheap, but also had CPR and first aid training, as well as other relevant training for babysitting. So that might also be where I got the idea for some sort of childcare entrepreneurial journey. But that's how I got started in childcare as a side hustle before I graduated. But getting started as a childcare professional, as in this was going to be my career, it was an accident. I ended up taking an unplanned year off of college, became a nanny, started college a year later after that gap year, and wasn't a good fit, couldn't find my fit. That nanny family, who will forever have a special place in my heart, not just the kids, but the mom and the dad, invited me to come out and stay with them. I tried my hand working in her cafe and did some of that, and restaurant industry wasn't for me, but I kept coming back to them. And she said to me, don't this isn't for you. We were talking about the cafe. Your happy place is when you're with the kids. I can see that. That's when you're happiest. That's when you're most relaxed. That's when you're most at ease. And then I went to Germany to become an au pair because they had au pairs that I had worked with, and I had helped to, I don't acclimate. Then I ended up hanging out with them, and I enjoyed that world. But when I went to Germany to become an au pair, I thought that was still going to be a step in me finding what I truly wanted to be, only to meet another dear friend who showed me how to make nanny, how I could take au pair, turn it into becoming a nanny, and turn nannying into an actual profession and career journey. And then I went to school, and I went to school for early childhood education, and quite frankly, the rest is history. That is how I got started in the childcare industry, and none of it was planned until almost 3 or 4 years into actually trying to do this, as actually working professionally in this industry, then deciding I was going to stay. But I didn't go into college saying I was going to get my degree in early childhood education. I didn't sit down and make a plan that this was going to be it. And I say this because I also think it's important to note that not every career goal, not every plan can come from seeing what jobs are offered at your local college job fair. I don't think this was offered at all. So it's just an important one to note that, if it hadn't been for those circumstances, I wouldn't be where I am today. Another question: what inspired you to start Posse Talks? So we talked about it a little at the beginning, that this was my, what am I trying to say? This was my response to the pandemic, right? But not only was it my response to the pandemic, it was also one of the ways I was coping through the pandemic, which was by watching vlogs and more specifically TED Talks. I really got into TED Talks, and I thought, oh my gosh, I wish there were TED Talks for the nanny world. I wish, if anything, I could just get up on that little stage. It's not a little stage. TED Talk is on a huge stage. But I wish I could get on that stage and just tell someone my story and make it short and sweet. Not like this podcast by any means. Make it short and sweet and just get that information out there. Let them consume it, and then we can be on to our next thing. Because at the time, too, we were so, quite frankly, overstimulated by the amount of digital stimulation we were getting. Short and sweet was all that I wanted, so I figured that was all anyone else wanted. However, now I think we're going back into wanting a few longer forms of content in different areas. At least I hope so. You obviously want it if you're still in this podcast. However, I still think the first kind of concept of Posse Talks, those short and sweet videos, are also very important, and we do hope to create some videos like that via Patreon as well, via our Patreon community, to get some of these messages out there, to get some of our teachings that don't need an entire episode or might be best consumed in smaller doses on a vlogging format. But again, that was the original concept of Posse Talk, but it's evolved, it's changed. We continue to move and groove. All right, third question. What topics can we expect to be covered in future episodes? Now, this question isn't so much from, I would say, our general public. This question is from our team. This question is something that we've been asking ourselves for nearly the last 2 months as we decided we were going to do this on if we're going to do this, what are we going to cover? What can we expect to share with them? What are we going to tell them to expect to hear from us? So in future episodes, we plan to cover a wide range of topics related to childcare and early childhood education. Remember that I ended up getting my degree in early childhood education. That is the route I ended up going, and since then, it is something I love, love, love. I recently had to, I didn't have to, but I recently created a new dating profile. That can be another one of its own episodes if you want. But it said, what is something that I won't shut up about? And I was like, oh my gosh, I won't shut up about the importance of why children should be outside during their learning day. And I realized that, yep, it's true. Early childhood education, early childhood development is something that I just could go on and on about. So because I can go on and on about it, and because my future dates don't want to hear about it, I thought I would share it with you all. And this seems like a more appropriate audience to be sharing that type of information with. And I would love to share more about childcare, early childhood education, early childhood development with you. So that is going to be the core of what our episodes are on. And some of those topics that we're going to explore are going to, again, include child development milestones, effective discipline strategies, creating nurturing environments, promoting positive behavior, and even bringing career development for nannies and childcare professionals. So again, I am a former I am a current childcare provider, but that used to be my only title, and now I'm a childcare entrepreneur. So I want to show you how you too can become a childcare or an educator entrepreneur. And through that, I will not be able to teach all these topics on my own. So we're going to bring in guest speakers to provide their own unique perspectives and insights on their master topics, the topics that they know well, because I don't know everything, and even the things that I do know, I don't know them all well. I'm going to try to talk to the topics I know well. I'm going to learn alongside you the things that I don't know well, or the things I don't know at all, because again, remember, we talked about it at the beginning, the reason we started this podcast is because I decided that I was going to be imperfect and I was going to grow alongside you in developing the ins and outs of what a podcast is. So not only can I be imperfect in being a podcast producer, but I'm also imperfect in being a childcare provider or a childcare entrepreneur, and I have things to learn, again, right alongside you. So I'm going to do that with you, and I, again, challenge you to make sure that you are getting out of your comfort zone along the way as well. Now, as we look to create this community, to build this community, to make it a strong community, we would love to hear from you. It is essential to have more than one voice to have a strong community. So we need to hear from you. That's why we created the Patreon community. We wanted to create a space where we could all come together to talk about these podcasts, to share ideas for future podcasts, to share polls, to do book clubs. One of our VIP tier is going to have a quarterly book club, and we're actually getting started with The Self-Driven Child. That's going to be book number 1. Again, book club is not fun with just 1 or 2 people. Natalie and I will for sure be in that book club together, but will you join us? Will you join our Patreon? Will you go right alongside us? Maybe you don't want to be a monthly supporter and you just want to listen to these podcasts, but you want to head over to Patreon and you want to see what other stuff we have there, like our nanny plans. You might have heard of our nanny plans before if you followed us in the past, but we're going to be exclusively selling nanny plans now on Patreon, and we're actually going to get started with a summer camp program, a summer camp edition, and that I will talk about in the next episode, but it's just one of the many things that you'll only find in our Patreon community. So again, in order for this podcast to grow and for this community to strengthen, join us on Patreon. Please, you can become a free supporter and just get updates, or you can join one of our tiers. In our next episode, we are going to go into nanny plans, what nanny plans are, what they've been in the past, what they're evolving into, because we're going to be creating our Book Nook series, which was another form of nanny plans that we did when we did Gut Story Time. So that everything's just getting a little facelift. Not much is new. We're just giving everything a facelift. So nanny plans will be there as Book Nook, Summer Camp. We're going to talk about that more. I'm not going to worry too much about that because that will be in the next episode. If you want to learn more about that, make sure you subscribe. Make sure that you continue to check in each week. New episodes are going to drop on Fridays. Fridays are going to be podcast drop days. However, you join Patreon, you can get it early, and those are going to drop on Wednesdays. So for those of you that are impatient like me, you don't have to wait until Fridays every week. You can join us on Wednesdays. All right, that is all. I want to thank you all for tuning in to today's first Posse Talks podcast, our first ever episode. Thank you so much for joining me. And remember, whether you're a seasoned nanny, nanny family, agency owner, or simply just visiting the nanny world, our posse is here to welcome and support you. Stay tuned for our next episode where we'll be exploring our nanny plans, and until then, keep spreading love and laughter in your nanny adventure.